Get out of here today, old hag. Today. And dispose of all your belongings. They're just in the way at home. Lisa made a gesture as if she was shooing someone away. When I was visibly upset, David cut in. Make sure not to leave even a single piece of trash behind. That was the last straw for me. I sighed and responded almost under my breath. Okay. Then, I turned my back on the two of them. Normally, when someone gets caught cheating, they apologize. Why act so defiant? Moreover, they tell me to leave because they want to live here together? Stop screwing around. They only said what was good for them, but don't they think I might have some evidence that was not good for them? Well, that's fine by me. Enjoy yourselves while you can. I'll be getting ready for payback over here. I smirked to myself as I headed to my room. My name is Michelle. I'm coming up on 20 years of marriage with my husband, David. At the age of 48, I work from home as a designer, while David, 2 years my senior, is thriving as a system engineer. Our son, Jason, born right after marriage, is now a 19-year-old distinguished college student. Hearing this, one might picture a happy family. But in reality, it's not quite like that. Recently, there's been something suspicious about David's behavior. On weekends, David sneaks out. Moreover, his returns on weekdays are considerably late. Furthermore, whenever he's home and the phone rings, he absolutely refuses to answer it in front of me. It's hard to think of it as anything but an affair. If he's cheating, then divorce is the only option, isn't it? Lately, I've been spending more time contemplating this. Looking back, David's attitude changed a few years ago. It was when Jason was in middle school and our expenses began to rise. Despite this, David's salary was gradually decreasing. When I asked for the reason, David would explain. The economy is bad, and the company is going through tough times. Hearing that, there's not much I can do. I cut down on living expenses. But that wasn't enough. So I thought about getting a job and talked about it with David. You know, I'm thinking of working part-time. What? Are we short on money? There are also the expenses for Jason's tutoring. I opened up to David about our financial struggles. Suddenly, David got angry. It's because you're wasting money. I was taken aback by this side of David. Of course, we've had our share of arguments before. But this was completely different from his previous attitudes. Despite feeling something was off, I retorted. I don't waste money. So, you're saying you're the useless one? Everyone is just so incompetent. It's all the same at work, filled with people who can't do their job. I even have to help with sales, that's how bad it is. And so, David's complaints never seemed to end. Eventually, I gave up on discussing it further. Later on, a former colleague at work before marriage contacted me, asking if I could help with her new venture. It had been over a decade since I left my job to get married. There was a bit of a gap, but I couldn't pass up this opportunity. I jumped at the proposal. That's how I started working from home as a designer. Of course, I told this to David. But, David just said, I see. He didn't seem to be very interested or even listening to much of what was being said. Regardless, I made sure to tell him properly. I continued my work with confidence. Then, after some time had passed, on a certain weekday. While I was working during the day, Jason unexpectedly came home. I'm home. Hi Jason, what's up with this early? It was just past noon. At that time, Jason was in middle school. He had classes until the evening, followed by extracurricular activities. There was no way he should be home at this hour. Didn't I tell you it's midterms starting today? I was taken aback. Looking at the calendar, it indeed said midterms. I forgot. I'll prepare lunch right away. I hurried to prepare Jason's lunch. Then, I heard Jason's voice from behind. Mom, were you working? What? The laptop is left out, and there are all sorts of documents around. Jason was pointing to the work documents and laptop I had left on the living room table. Oh, sorry. I'll clean it up right away. No worries, it's fine. Anyway, I got something to talk with you. Jason ran to his room. Soon, he returned with a tablet. I've been making a game. I want to be an engineer like Dad. Jason showed me the game he created on his tablet. It wasn't as polished as commercial games, but it was quite good. That's amazing. I want to go to a vocational school. Do you think Dad would agree? If you show this to him, I'm sure he'll agree. I was wholeheartedly supporting Jason. But our hopes were shattered. Because when David saw the game Jason created, he harshly criticized it. This is it? Don't make me laugh. But no good, absolutely no good. I could make something like this in 10 minutes. David laughed uproariously. Seeing David like that made me furious. From the perspective of a systems engineer, David might think Jason's game making is little more than kids' play. It's one thing to offer professional advice, but mocking is just unacceptable. As I was about to complain, David continued speaking to Jason. If you have time to play around like this, concentrate more on your schoolwork. Choose words more carefully. When I cut in, David became visibly irritated. What? Any problem with my way of educating Jason? Oh yes. You should respect his autonomy more. Huh? After all, isn't it the wife's responsibility to educate the children? If you had properly educated him, this wouldn't be an issue. David raised his voice. I immediately clammed up. There's no point in arguing with him. I have to be the one to support Jason. In the end, I just silently listened to David's complaints. I waited for David's anger to subside. And the next day, when David wasn't around, I said to Jason, Jason, I'll buy you a computer, so use it to learn game making. Really? Of course. If your dad says anything, I'll tell him I'm using it for work. So, I ended up buying an expensive desktop computer out of my own pocket for Jason. David looked suspicious, but I insisted it was for work. This incident became a turning point, and my relationship with David gradually worsened. Of course, I've thought about divorce. But with Jason around, it's not easy to bring up. I continued to feel uneasy. Meanwhile, Jason went on to college. I thought I could study more specialized subjects in college, and Dad wouldn't complain, he said. Before I knew it, Jason had grown up to be quite wise. Maybe we'll manage even if I decide to divorce. That's when I started considering it. Jason, who had just returned from college, rushed to me. Mom, you've got to hear this. What's the matter, Jason? I stopped my work and looked up. Jason's face was pale. I began to feel anxious. Finally, Jason hesitantly started to speak up. Actually, I saw Dad cheating. Dad's cheating? When I asked him back, Jason gave me the detail. Here's what Jason told me. It happened a few hours ago. Jason was heading to the college to take the lecture. But then, his friend messaged him that the lecture was cancelled. So, he went out to downtown to hang out with his friend. That's when he saw David walking arm in arm with a young woman. Due to the presence of friends, it seems he chose to ignore what he saw. But unable to bear it, he came home. Sorry. If I had been alone, I would have confronted Dad right there. That would have been impossible, of course. I understood the pain Jason was going through. Setting that aside, I was already aware of David's infidelity. Thinking about it, David's recent behavior had been strange. He would leave immediately on weekends and come home late on weekdays. When at home, he would sneakily talk on the phone away from me. There was no way I couldn't suspect something. That's why I had already requested an investigation into David's conduct a while back. I already had the results. When I shared this with Jason, he looked surprised and asked me, "So, you were calm because of that? Are you thinking of getting a divorce?" Well, the investigation results were conclusive, probably. I see. If that's what you've decided, Mom, I won't say anything. If that was the case, it made things simpler. That night, I intended to confront David when he came home. However, David didn't come home. He must have realized that Jason had seen him. David returned a few days later, on a Sunday. Moreover, he was accompanied by a young woman I didn't know. As I was wondering if this woman was his mistress, she spoke up first. "Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Lisa and I am David's girlfriend." Her insincere greeting infuriated me. In the Maya time, David said to me, "So, Lisa and I will live here together after I divorce you. You leave right away. What's the reason? A brilliant man like me deserves a younger woman, not an old hag like you." David smirked. "How can you say that?" Even though I was dumbfounded, I complied. "Oh really? That's exactly what I was hoping for." I dared to be sarcastic to them. Then, Lisa, looking annoyed, pointed at me. "Acting all high and mighty for an old hag? Think you can live on your own? Unfortunately for you, I work, so I'll be just fine." "Oh, then let's get that divorce done quickly, okay?" Lisa pulled a divorce oath from her pocket and threw it at my feet. "I'll be sure to get alimony from both of you." Lisa frowned in dissatisfaction at my words. Meanwhile, David waited with a smirk. I signed the divorce oath and handed it to David. At that moment, Lisa said with a triumphant look, "Get out of here today, old hag. Today. And dispose of all your belongings. They're just in the way at home." Lisa made a gesture as if she was shooing someone away. When I was visibly upset, David cut in. "Make sure not to leave even a single piece of trash behind." That was the last straw for me. I sighed and muttered in response, "Okay." Then, I turned my back on the two of them. Normally, when caught cheating, one would apologize. Why act so defiant? Moreover, they're telling me to leave because they want to live here together? Stop screwing around. They only said what was good for them, but don't they think I might have some evidence that was not good for them? Well, that's fine by me. Enjoy yourselves while you can. I'll be getting ready for payback over here. I smirked to myself as I headed to my room. Before packing my belongings, I called a junk removal service. I started packing after arranging for the removal. After a while, Jason, who had been out, returned. I could hear David and Jason talking in the living room. But they soon started arguing. "It's because Dad cheated. Shouldn't you apologize to Mom first?" "Shut up. It's none of your business." After such an exchange, it suddenly became quiet. Peeking into the living room, I found only Jason. "Jason? Where are they?" "They said they're going on a trip." "What a joke." Jason stamped his feet. I felt relieved. If David wasn't here, I could do as I wanted. "Let's take this opportunity for payback." I spoke to Jason with a smile. "Jason, I'm getting divorced and moving out. Want to come with me?" "Of course." "Then, start preparing for the move." "Anne." I shared a plan with Jason. Hearing it, he started preparing for the move without hesitation. In the midst of this, the junk removal service arrived. I guided them inside the house. "Please dispose of all the furniture and appliances in this room and this room." "All of it?" "There are some new items." "That's fine. I'll buy new ones after moving." I asked them to dispose of the furniture and appliances in mine and Jason's rooms. However, I didn't touch the living room items. Those were shared property with David. I didn't want to dispose of them and get complaints later. In any case, I had my items and those I bought disposed of. They'll regret it. Later, in the evening, I left the house. I handed over the belongings to the moving company. Since I hadn't decided on a new place yet, I asked them to keep the belongings for a while. Meanwhile, Jason and I moved to a nearby hotel. We decided to stay there for the time being. And then, a few days passed. While having breakfast, I received a call from David. "Hello? What's up?" "What do you mean, what's up? Did you really throw away all the furniture and appliances?" "Huh? Of course, it's what you asked for, isn't it?" As I snapped back, David suddenly faltered. He mumbled something incomprehensible. I was so exasperated that I scolded him. "You're the one who said to throw them away. Don't complain about it now." "Well, that's true, but..." His response was hesitant. He must have needed that after all. Actually, I had an idea of what David was looking for. Knowing this, I had said that everything was disposed of. As I thought about this, David suddenly became more submissive. So, which company did you use for the disposal? Why do you want to know that? Well, I'm looking for something. Just as I thought. I smirked to myself. Then, I asked him pointedly. Looking for something? The fridge, washing machine, and TV, all your stuff is there, right? No, it's not that, it's about the computer. I knew it. David was looking for the computer I bought for Jason. Feeling certain, I mentioned it casually. The computer? That's something I bought for Jason. I was planning to dispose of it since it's mine too. You haven't disposed of it? David's voice suddenly became anxious. While thinking I had him hooked, I continued. Yes. It's better to sell it on Craigslist than to just throw it away. Please, return that computer to me. What? It's mine, so why should I return it? At that, David was at a loss for words. However, this wasn't enough for payback. So, I made a proposal. Well, how about this? Will you buy it from me? Buy it? Yes. I was planning to sell it anyway, so if you want to buy it, I'll sell it to you. At that moment, David's tone brightened. Okay. It's used, so how about $500? What? I won't sell it that cheap. How about $10,000? What's that? Are you ripping me off? Annoyed, David raised his voice. I'm not forcing you to buy it. Besides, why do you want a used computer? When I asked, David clearly started to panic. Well, that's... You could just buy a new one. Fine. $10,000, right? I'll pay. Just sell it to me. While feeling triumphant inside, I agreed and informed David of the arrangement. Afterwards, David immediately demanded the computer be sent. But, the belongings were with the moving company. So, I told him that I couldn't send it right away and asked him to wait until I had settled into a new place. David kept complaining, but eventually, he reluctantly agreed. A few days later, I finally decided on my new home. I moved to my new place with the help of Jason. Right after that, I received the payment for the computer from David. I handed that money to Jason. Jason, use this money to start living on your own. I thought it was the perfect opportunity. Jason started living alone in an apartment near the college. Lastly, I sent the computer to David's house. However, I removed the external disk. Then, I sent that disk to the company where David works. With a letter to his boss. Soon after, I got a call from David's boss. On the designated day, I went to David's company. When I gave my name at the reception and waited, a man slightly older than me appeared. Nice to meet you. I'm Kevin, the department head. Are you the ex-wife of David, who sent me the letter? Yes, thank you for your help. For now, please come with me to my office. Following Kevin's lead, I am guided along. Eventually, we arrived at the department head's office. Upon entering, I saw David sitting on the sofa with a solemn expression. Michelle. Why are you here? David stood up suddenly. It's for payback. I smiled, and David turned pale. Then Kevin intervened. Shall we begin the discussion? David's complexion changed at Kevin's words. Sweating, David sat back down on the sofa. First, I'd like to ask David, what is this all about? Kevin placed the external disk of the computer on the table. It was the one I had sent to Kevin. David immediately averted his gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. But this came from your ex-wife and it contains our client data, doesn't it? Kevin glared at David with a stern look. David started to stammer excuses. It must have been mixed in with the things I used for work. We prohibit taking client data out of the office, don't we? So, it was a mistake. He should just be honest. I was inwardly laughing. This was a bit before David and I divorced. David was acting strangely. One day, when I came back from shopping, for some reason, David was sitting in front of Jason's computer. The computer was in the living room. Of course, under the pretext that I was going to use it. But there was no reason for David to use it. because David had his own computer in his room. Finding it odd, I secretly checked on what David was doing. He was doing something and then turned off the power. Pretending not to notice, I checked the computer the next day. There were unfamiliar data written to the external disk. Looking into it, it was some kind of database. I had an epiphany. That David taking company data and using someone else's computer as a hiding spot. Despicable. Right after that, we ended up getting divorced. That's why I took the computer. But did David really not expect me to get rid of it? Since he seemed to be aware that Jason was using it, maybe he assumed I would leave it behind. Regardless, David must be regretting it now. Looking at David, he seemed like he was about to cry. What do you mean? Speak clearly. I'm sorry. Finally, David admitted his guilt. Afterward, David got a severe scolding from Kevin. Then Kevin said, "Taking company data is theft, or a violation of the Unfair Competition Act." What? No way. We're going to file charges. As soon as Kevin said that, David burst into tears. He deeply apologized to Kevin. "I'm so sorry. Would you please forgive me?" No way. You'll be held responsible in both criminal and civil court. That can't. David broke down and cried on the spot. Seeing David crumble so pathetically, I couldn't stop laughing inside. This is what happens when you do something strange. Just desserts. If only I could get back at him for his infidelity too. Then, suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Immediately after, I heard a woman's voice. "Did you call for me, Kevin?" "Yes, come in." That voice sounds familiar. As I was thinking of it, the door opened. "Excuse me." Oh. The moment I saw the woman who entered, I couldn't help but exclaim. At the same time, the woman looked at me. Then she shouted. "What? Why are you here?" The woman who raised her voice like a shout was Lisa. Well, it's a long story. Shut up. This is not a place for an old hag like you. As she said that, Lisa hurriedly covered her mouth. Because she noticed Kevin's face turning red with anger. Kevin, with his jaws clenched, told Lisa to take a seat. Lisa quietly sat down where David had been sitting. Upon confirming that, Kevin asked Lisa. "By the way, Lisa. I have something I want to ask. I hear you're going independent?" Yes, that's right. And your business is going to be in the same field as ours, isn't it?" Kevin looked at her sternly. Seemingly intimidated, Lisa stumbled over her words in response. Then Kevin's questioning reached the crux of the matter. "You're in charge of managing customer data, aren't you? Is everything all right on that front?" What do you mean?" Lisa started sweating. That's when I realized. Man, these two were in cahoots. Lisa and David were planning to take the customer data with them. In short, here's the situation. David and Lisa were each planning to take customer data from their company. Based on that data, Lisa would go independent first. Then David would join her, and they would work together. Once the answer became clear, it all seemed rather uninteresting. They were just trying to make a quick buck using someone else's resources. It's just pathetic. I sighed. As the conversation continued, Kevin was pressing Lisa for answers. "I had my subordinates investigate, and it turns out there has been a leak on your side as well." That's... It seems you were involved, weren't you?" Lisa looked down at Kevin's question. But soon, she raised her head and started making excuses. "No, it's not like that. This was all David's doing." She was cut off as David bristled with anger. He stood up quickly and started arguing with Lisa. "Are you blaming me? It was your idea in the first place." "What? I don't know what you're talking about. You did this all on your own." "What? You said you wanted to marry me because..." I was dumbfounded by their ridiculous exchange of excuses. At that point, I took out a document from my bag. I placed it on the table and addressed David and Lisa, who were still arguing. "This is the result of your affair investigation. Just so you know, that woman has a boyfriend. What? David hurriedly picked up the document from the table. Attached to it were photos of Lisa holding hands with another man. Lisa. What is the meaning of this? That's none of your business. Shut up. You tricked me. David raised his voice in anger. It was so disgraceful that I couldn't help but murmur. She just prefers younger men over old guys like you, doesn't she? David suddenly became subdued, perhaps remembering what he had said to me. Well, regardless, you'll have to take responsibility, so brace yourself. Wait, just hold on. This is a crime. Save your excuses for the police station. With Kevin's roar, Lisa was left speechless. Following that, the company pressed charges against David and Lisa. Shortly thereafter, the two were arrested for theft among other charges. Furthermore, the company also initiated a civil lawsuit against them for damages. Naturally, any talk of Lisa going independent evaporated. At the same time, it seems Lisa's boyfriend took off as well. The two, now facing charges of theft and violations of the Unfair Competition Act, seem to be busy making excuses in court. However, it's hard to imagine those excuses holding any water. The outcome of the trial is certainly something to watch. Even if they end up with a fine, I doubt either of them can afford to pay it. I'm just glad I got alimony before things got to this point. By the way, I'm thoroughly enjoying living on my own. My design work is going well, and my income is stable. It seems Jason has found himself a girlfriend, so there's plenty to look forward to right now. Eventually, when grandchildren come along, things will get noisy, but for now, I'm planning to enjoy the peace and quiet.